Right, this is the leadership meeting for Harmony Springs Christian Church on May 13th, 2020. We are in the middle of well, I don't really know where we are in the middle of the coronavirus pandemic. I'm not sure anybody does at this point, but we're somewhere in and during the coronavirus pandemic. So we're meeting virtually here with our leadership, our trustees and elders. And we are at hopefully towards the beginning stages of our building project here at Harmony Springs. So our meeting tonight, right off the bat, we're gonna have a few updates on our building project, where we stand as far as progress being made on our building project, and then some other things ministry-wise that the church has been working on during the coronavirus pandemic here to go over. So not a whole lot of things for the building project to go over, so hopefully we won't have a terribly long meeting tonight, so you all can get back to, I don't know, binge watching some other show or social distancing, however you're doing it at home. All right, I sent out an email to everybody this afternoon or so that just had some things I jotted down for an agenda. The first on that list was a couple of updates. Chuck Culver, you're willing to welcome to jump in or give updates as you want to during this. But the way we left it during the last meeting, Weaver was finalizing the budget on some things, some sort of last things that our architect had tweaked or changed because of some engineering design changes that got thrown in. And because of those engineering changes, the budget had slightly inflated, and then Weaver was able to work with the architect to bring the budget back down. So currently, correct me if I'm wrong, Chuck, but currently the number that we were sitting at, that Chuck and I went over with Weaver last week, is 1.64. Is that right, Chuck? I just want to confirm that with Chuck.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds right. So I have a meeting Friday at 4:30 to go look over the final version and sign it off if it looks good. But we had the overage looked like the remaining overage looked like it was probably something that might either be something we could reduce some costs and come back to our original number, or look at landscaping or some other options that so the number that we're signing off on is a maximum number that they can't exceed without our written permission. So they seem to imply that there's a good chance that we'll come in at our original number, even though the number we're signing off on is a little bit over our original budget.
Right. Yeah. I could try to summarize that quickly, I guess, for everybody. But so basically, what Chuck and I's conversation was with them was, by the end of the conversation, we went over all those things, and basically they got down the number back down to as close as they could at this point, to that 1.64 number. Remember, before we had gotten it down by sort of removing a few things to 1.595. But I think because of some health code stuff and some changes with the kitchen, there were some things that after they checked the code that we were required to have in that was some fluctuation in price. But basically that 1.64 number is a hard number then that Weaver can work with. It's sort of a maximum bid or estimate then that allows them to create an addendum, which is the next piece of paperwork or legal paperwork that is what Chuck is going to go over and needs to sign with them. Once Chuck signs that addendum as our legal representative, then they can put together the construction agreement based on that. And that's the big final sort of agreement that we would have with Weaver then to lock everything in. But basically the way Chuck and I sort of understood it, and the way I think that we proceed from here then, is that we can use that 1.64 number, and really Weaver was telling us that they're hoping that they can continue to work on getting other bids between now and, subcontractors coming in and actually working, to keep working on getting that number down to where we need to be. But to move forward with the construction agreement, they just want to be able to use that 1.64 number. So, and there are other things that we can control as well. Like, last meeting we had, Janice suggested that we get a bid through Canton Road Greenhouse, where she has family connections on landscaping those trees and shrubbery, that kind of thing, which I have sent to her in the meantime, and she's referred on to them. So, we can work on that kind of stuff in the meantime, but while we're doing that, our understanding is that we need to kind of, lock in a budget number to move forward so that they can create all that construction agreement and paperwork. Does that sort of summarize it as best you can understand it, Chuck, or do you want to add anything to that?
No, that sounds good.
Does anybody have any questions about that?
After the construction agreement signed, they'll start breaking ground then?
Yeah, so in the meantime, they're also concurrently working on applying for building permits and all the other permits that we need. So they're already doing that, even though I guess we haven't officially signed the construction agreement with them, but they're just going ahead based on our verbal understanding. But so the architects have filed permits with the city, and Chuck and I and Donna have been working with them on with Summit Soil and Water. And what was the one we did just get back, Chuck? It was the stormwater permit?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we did get approval for and that was through Summit Soil and Water, right? Correct?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So we had some hiccups on that. We had to go online and change some things over and have Chuck and send in some permitting fees, but we got that all done and they approved it and sent it back. So yeah, so to answer your question, John, yeah, the plan is Weaver's, telling us that we're continuing to move forward, and the plan is to hopefully start excavation or moving dirt around up there yet this month here. All right, any other thoughts, comments you want to throw in, Chuck, on the building project, or any other questions anybody has on the building project? That's kind of where we sit right now, I guess.
That's all I have.
Okay. One kind of fun side thing that we're working on is that Dan Burrow-Young and I have kind of been coordinating with Weaver a little bit. He's going to put up a time-lapse camera on the property so that when they do start moving dirt around, we're going to have over the period of time that they're building, a time-lapse video created of the building going up. So that's kind of cool. He's going to put a camera that's battery operated on a pole, and then the video gets saved. The time-lapse pictures get saved on a memory card, and Dan is willing to go every month and kind of change out batteries and download the images that are stored on the video card and kind of get it all put together. So that should be kind of neat to have. All right. I asked Donna if she would come just sign in tonight to be a part of this, just to give us a bit of an update on, I'm sure, some things that you're wondering about that I've been asked about from time to time on where Harmony Springs, where we sit financially, giving and building project and all of that. Donna, do you mind just kind of giving us a little bit of a update on that?
No, that's fine. Well, like through the end of April, our giving is at about 93%. This time last year was at 97. So it's not off a whole lot than what it was last year at the same time. Our expenses look like they're higher, but trying to be more forthcoming. Remember this year we added Jennifer and Kevin's salaries actually into the budget numbers. And that's the only difference between our expenses this year versus last year at this time, is just that additional payroll number that we used to pay with other funds. Other than that, I don't know, does anybody have any questions about the budget or the financial numbers? Okay. Well then, also you asked about the capital campaign. 1 year input is through the end of February. At that point, we were actually about 94%, but I went back to look at who's paid and who hasn't. And if I take out those people that were very good-hearted about pledging, but we really can't anticipate on receiving those funds, we're actually at about 104% of what should have been anticipated. So it all depends on which number you compare what we've received to. Our 100% of our pledges or our more actual pledges that we will receive. So I think as far as that goes with our campaign, we're doing really well on that, which puts it as we've received $48,705 through the end of February on the campaign. And Jackie, the payroll protection is going to be awesome to help us through the in the next couple of months, because it'll come into effect for the May, June, and part of July payroll. We'll cover that. We actually received the money May 1st, so it doesn't show up on the April expense report, but it will show up then beginning in May. That will offset that expense, which will help make our budget a little bit easier to meet. And then the other thing you asked me, Joel, was about the mutual aid fund. And we received $3,500 for that. And we've helped 5 people. And we spent a little over $2,200 on that, which gives us roughly $1,200 left, which could easily do 2 people, maybe 3 or 4, depending on what people need or how much they're spending. Because we're spending anywhere from our lease was $155 up to $500. So it depends on people's needs, how many more people will be able to assist. But so far, we've been able to help 5 people. Any questions?
No questions. I just think it's really awesome how many people have been able to help with the mutual aid fund. I'm getting a real good feedback on my end.
Jackie has a question about how the grant will factor into the budget.
She already answered that for me.
Oh, I missed it.
It's going to cover the next month.
Basically, yeah, it'll show up in May. We actually received the funds May 1st, so it'll show up as like operating other income to help offset the payroll line. And I have to track it to make sure that it's only being used for our payroll expenses.
Donna, the 93% number that you had was that was giving compared to
the pledge versus giving.
Okay.
What people pledge versus what we're getting, about 93% of that. Yeah, and we're receiving about 94% of the capital campaign. Like I said, unless we reduce it by those that I just know we won't receive. And then we're actually on target.
I was thinking, Donna, what was our projected deficit last at our congregational meeting of like expenses over giving? Is the payroll protection money going to help close that gap a little bit? Our giving stays about, 93%.
Oh, it'll definitely help with that additional income, like I said, because it covers our payroll for the 2.5 months. So that is a big help. I'm looking for our actual numbers that we approved. Yeah, it looks like our under for our expenses over our anticipated income was going to be like almost 32,000, but we were hoping to get an additional 15,000 by leaving our investment with UBS as long as we can before we have to start spending down for the building. By having not breaking ground till May, we were hoping to get a little extra income from just having those invested.
Right.
So even with that, we were still looking at a shortfall of 17,000 if our income and expenses stay as projected.
Okay. Any other questions on that?
So my comment would be if that loan becomes a grant for payroll protection, that would definitely help us balance our budget this year.
Yeah. Seems that way. All right. Thanks for doing that, Don. I appreciate that. I think it's helpful this far in just to kind of let everybody know where we sit with all that. Yeah, Cheryl, I'm not sure. I know I'm using a new webcam and the webcam has the mic. I'm trying to figure out what the settings are to see if I'm the one causing that feedback loop. I probably am.
It was through Donna's speakers, I think.
Oh.
So
Well,
it's muted, which looks
okay.
like it's all good.
All right. Moving on, I don't have too much to give you on this, but I mentioned this on Sunday to everyone, but just something to be thinking about, I guess. But Akron General, the email that I got from Troy at Akron General about them doing coronavirus testing in that conference room space. So we basically know at this point that we have to come up with an alternative plan for what we're doing between now and when the building is complete. So the next, I guess, big piece of information that we should get here pretty soon in the next couple of weeks would be, from Weber once we sign the building agreement. And they've mentioned a couple times that they should be able to get us a construction timeline. So we should be able to have some pretty close idea of when, the construction of the building will happen and be complete. So then we can have kind of a timeline to work with and we can try to figure out what we want to try to do. What was that? Yes, Greg. Yeah, I would guess that they'll be using that space for a while. Staff meeting today, we were talking a little bit about, different things we've been reading about just in-person congregational meeting anyhow. And it seems like if you read that one pretty good article that was going around about how to make good decisions, once things start to open up, it seemed like church services especially are one of them. The article that was going around was basically making the point that church services and group singing are sort of some of the most high risk things as far as coronavirus. So, Debbie and I were talking a lot about, or in staff meeting, we were talking a lot about that unfortunate news. But so it seems like, even when we're meeting in person or able to, if this is continuing on, that in-person, congregational singing may be on hold for a while. So we can keep moving down the list here and talk about some of these other things, which are temporary, if not somewhat more long-term solutions to some of that, and not really solutions, but stopgap things we can do, I guess, to try to fill the gap. But so I don't know, but that's kind of where we're thinking. We're just trying to keep an eye on that and see what we can do between now and then, I guess. Unfortunately, it seems like the in-person gatherings, as far as groups are concerned, are towards the end of what I'm reading about are going to be happening. So it may be a while yet before we get the green light. Let's see. I saw you all. Yeah. Dick and Sally were saying, yeah, we could go back to Tadmore for a little bit, maybe some outside services. Yeah, we may just have to get creative for a little while. And yes, we were talking about in that article, it did seem like anything outdoors does seem to be the least risky thing that people can do right now. So if, over the summer here, we find things that we can do outdoors and follow the guidelines or recommendations, we may be able to accomplish some of those gatherings together in person. So we'll just have to try to do our best to be safe and try to be as smart as we can to have some in-person gatherings. And then, yeah, John.
Oh, what about that? You have a friend that has that church in 619 that has that, that we were there before.
Mm-hmm.
What about doing some, maybe if staggered, would he let you have a service later than his or something like that?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we could look at, whatever options are available to us, and as things start to open up a little bit more, we'll have to keep an eye on all that.
How feasible or a good idea would small groups be in the meantime? Maybe even just doing this Google Meet for 20 minutes, 15 minutes, and then separating into our small groups and, at people's homes or whatever, especially when the weather's getting nice, you can always hang out outside or whatnot.
Yeah, that's a possibility. I've thought about that as a possibility, as trying to do something along the lines of a small group gathering of sorts, or mixing it up so we can still see each other or be in person in some way, but be as, try to keep the risk down minimally as possible. That's not a bad idea. All right. Well, keep thinking about that. I'll keep an eye on, I've been trying to keep an eye on what other churches are doing too, to see, just if there's any creative ideas out there that seem to fit well with our current situation. So in the meantime, we have a couple of projects that we have kind of been trying to, or have been discussing for the last couple weeks, that I think we will, or are starting to get off the ground. So I just wanted to go over those with you real quick to give you some sense, I guess, of what we can get started sooner rather than later. And then we can keep talking about some of these other things, ideas that we can start to implement down the road here. Debbie has been a brave volunteer and willing to lead a kids virtual meeting like this to do a song and teach them some emotion. So she's going to start that out on Sunday after church is over, about 11:40. So I sent out an email today to some of the parents to experiment with that. So we're going to try that out with some of our younger kids, Sunday school age kids, to see how that goes virtually in the meantime as sort of a stopgap thing. And then Terry has been working on a bit more complicated project, which is that some of this virtual music has been taking off, or the technology has been catching up with the need during coronavirus here. So he's been working with Debbie and John to experiment with some of the virtual choir stuff that's been going around, or he's invested some time and energy in trying to set that up. So they've recorded some singing and vocal parts, and he told us at staff meeting today that he and Mary were going to record some parts. So it's interesting because it kind of involves him recording his part, like keyboard, and then he sends it to other people who record their part, and then it all gets put together for us to, at some point in the next couple weeks, if it all goes well, hopefully be able to hear and listen to. So it's kind of a virtual choir project, but that can also be more than just singing or choir. He's thrown around the idea of, and he has some friends who are doing instrumentation that way also. So like one person that sort of takes the lead and does their instrumentation or vocal, and then sends it to other people who are at home, and they add their instrumentation to it, and then all the tracks get put together, and a piece of music kind of gets put together that way. So Terry knows more about the ins and outs of how it's all being done, but I guess the technology is making it a little bit easier right now, or the technology people are making it easier for the music people to be able to put that together and do it than they were able to before. So he's working on that. The other thing we've been discussing is we were just starting to get off the ground the podcast project that Jennifer was overseeing, that we got a grant for, and then coronavirus hit and it like completely shut us down. But we've been seeing some other people transitioning from podcast to like a video version of a podcast, like videocast or vidcast. And Jennifer has that she's been working on. And then the city has actually continued their Adopt a Spot program that Jennifer just got and responded to as well. So I asked Jennifer if she would just talk about those couple projects that she was working on. And those are the last couple things, unless other people have things after that they want to talk about that I had on my agenda for this evening. So Jennifer, will you talk about those couple things?
Yeah, so the Adopt a Spot, I received an email late yesterday that Harmony Springs has requested a spot and been given a spot. We are not at the soccer fields this year, but we will be at the Liberty Park, the one on 619. There are two different gardens there. There's one at the top of the hill when you first drive in, next to their sign, like we had at Spring Hill, the soccer fields. But then also they have a separate garden that's at the very bottom of the parking lot between there and the playground itself. Well, we have only the top section. So just around their sign, it's maybe, I haven't driven past it since we got the spot, but I feel like it's only half as much as it was at the soccer field. So that's kind of nice in order to take care of it if we don't have a wet enough summer. 2 years ago, Janice Kuckler was taking buckets and buckets and buckets of water to the soccer fields to make sure that they stayed wet enough. And so, thanks to her for that. But it won't be quite as much of a chore if that happens again as it did a couple years ago. So the pickup and planting is the last week of May and the first week of June. So I will certainly run and pick up all the plants. And then we need to decide what's the optimal method to plant. Do we just let everyone know that it's coming up and let everyone who wants to come that day? Do we try to purposely break it up into smaller groups? What are your thoughts?
How many people normally come?
We have had as many as 8 or 10.
So it's still like a quote unquote under 10 group normally.
Absolutely. Yes. And if we had more than that, we could certainly have a few people sitting in their cars waiting and then, trade off or something like that.
Okay.
Typically it's been my garden crew, maybe one or two extra people would step in, but it's mostly the garden folks. So no real opinions otherwise. All right, thank you. So I will be in contact with Joel about getting an email out to the congregation about that and that time and trying to coordinate with anybody who's interested. Is there anyone on this call who's interested in coming out to help plant? No as well. Okay, thanks. I know you're not really my target audience, so that's fine. Looking at the podcast, yeah, we love the idea of coming in and doing a video cast, as Joel mentioned, Joe called it, doing it through video. That way we can all remain in our own spaces. I've been thinking about this a lot the past week or so, as we've talked about it. And when we first came up with the idea, there was such a, everyone had higher levels of expectation for finished products. And there was a certain level of expectation for what a podcast would sound like, what it would look like, what would bring others to listen to it. And I really think that bar has changed. It's moved, a bit. I'm not saying that it's lower, but it's just different. And people are more willing to accept something that sounds different. They know that we're not in the same space. If they know that we're recording around now, they would also then recognize if voices came out differently. Some were a little bit louder, some were a little bit quieter through the videos. It wouldn't be as much of a problem at this point as it might have been previously. Anyhow, so I would love to get back on that. We have through the end of the calendar year to use our $3,500. We haven't used much of that yet, so we should get on it. One of them, some of our money was for guest speakers. That's not something that I think that we'll end up doing at this point. Maybe later in the year, but we're not in a position now to be, offering space to somebody to come be part of the podcast that way. So maybe that would be $500 toward a speaker fee for somebody who would request a fee. Maybe gets us a higher caliber of visitor. We have money for website design. We can still use that, the web hosting and so on. One of the other items that we had was Blessings in a Backpack hygiene donations. As we collected last year, the soap and shampoo and everything for the Blessings in a Backpack, we took 2 collections last year, one of them now in May for a June distribution, another one in August for a distribution around school time. I do not have a very good idea on how to take those collections. I could put a box outside my front door and just tell people where to show up to take things. Does that work for you guys? Do you think people would go ahead and collect some stuff at the store when they're out and drop them off somewhere?
I would be willing to, donate monetarily, like on Facebook, like we've been doing, for people like me, I guess. That's kind of, I think, would be like the easiest, most convenient, but then I still, I'm able to give at the same time. So maybe just another Facebook fundraiser. Mm-hmm. And then you or whoever can go out and purchase the items that are really needed.
Yep. Looking at the amount of money that we requested, it was to cover approximately half of each collection. So we certainly have the money out of the grant itself. Plus, I think there was a flexibility of 10% on top of that. So I could always buy a little bit extra for another, donation at some point. But we do not have enough money in that fund to cover the amount that we were able to collect last year for 2 distributions. And that's just a reality of where we are right now. Okay.
Jen,
Yes.
I was going to say that if there are people who want to donate the way that you mentioned, bringing things to your house, dropping them off in a box, then certainly let's let them do that. But I think many of us need the second option, which Jackie mentioned, which is give monetarily so that someone else can do the shopping.
Mm-hmm.
It won't necessarily be possible for everyone to drop something off, yet they would probably want to participate. And if they can do so monetarily, that would be good.
Sure. And, if we were to put together a Facebook fundraiser for that, then I could even post that to the city folks that I see online and, get donations outside of our organization as well. Yeah, that would be nice. I think that would work. And then maybe we could have enough for 2 different distributions. So I like that idea. Thank you. The next item on my list, we have just a couple left, is Blessings in a Backpack thank you dinner. For those who heard about that thank you dinner, it was actually, in the end, we decided an October date for October 1st is a Thursday. It would be a brunch right after a packing day. So we would ask people to go straight from the school to the Central Park, which, I've not officially been canceled for that yet, by the city, that is. But at the same time, I don't know that people are going to be able and willing. We'll have to see how things go once fall comes. Jennifer, Dora, and I have already spoken just a little bit about how that might change. And if it changes, then I recommended that we come up with some sort of a package, a box of items that we can then send to the folks. Even if we were to use that money, we have $800 for approximately 60 to 80 people. We also, families where there's a husband, wife that go together, we could use both of them for just one package. For that, we could even do, fancy cookies or something like that to their house to say thank you. Some other gift type item. So that's kind of on hold, but that's where we've thought about it. One of the items on here, there were 2 actually, were elderly outreach. One is cards made by youth. I put on here $100 for materials, and I would need to brainstorm how we can make that happen, how we can get items to the youth to have them decorate cards and pick up. Now, Debbie, you did a thing for our shut-ins for the church. Is that I think it was while we were still meeting at the church though, right? So they did them during church? I don't remember exactly.
Am I having a sound issue or is Debbie muted?
Yeah, I don't see her speaking. Can't unmute. Oh, it's stuck. Okay. So thank you, Donna. Donna says that Debbie emailed the template to families. They would print them out themselves and mail them back to Debbie. So that is another way that we could do that. We could make a request of a certain number of items per child to be given and then pick one of the local facilities. Had not done that yet. So I know that we do a lot with Greenview, and I might like to use them again since we've already had connections with them previously. Another one was to decorate and donate. Oh, Debbie never got any back. Well, that's obviously not helpful then. That's important to note. Then that is definitely not our best way to do it because that didn't work. So we'll have to think of other ideas. Maybe stew on this and come back to me in a couple weeks when we have our next leadership meeting. But another one was to decorate and donate mini holiday trees. At this point, I've called 3 facilities just for a generic request, not saying who I was or that I was, asking for us to do it as a group. But so far, 3 facilities in Green are not willing to take in items like a full Easter basket or anything like that. It's only individuals for their own families. They take cards, they'll take posters, balloons, but that's it.
I'm finally unmuted.
Yes.
I got stuck there. Couldn't get it off. When we have done cards before, back in High Street days, we did them with youth and with kids, but we were gathered at church and they did them during either youth group time or church time, Sunday school time. And of course, then we had plenty of cards to send out. At least this first try, with us being apart and trying to do it remotely, I did not receive any cards back from that request for kids to, do it at home and then send them to me. Now, maybe they did them and sent them on their own to people they knew, but I don't have any record of any being sent.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm personally feeling, when I look at our list of items for the grant, we had these events that were supposed to go along with topics of the podcast, and we certainly can continue to do the podcast, put that back together, get it moving. But I'm feeling a bit discouraged personally about the other items and, how it was put together and how to make that work. I even have $600 in publicity and advertising, and maybe we could find a way to use that for something different, somehow related to podcast or that sort of thing. It doesn't specifically say that it would be for podcast events, but I'm sure that was the assumption. I know it was when I wrote it. So that's what I have. But for those who are involved in podcasts, would you be free, if I were to create another Wednesday meeting for next week, would you be free to join us in the evening for a quick conversation about it? And then we can all make plans together on when we actually want to do it?
I can do that, but I don't have a camera. I realize I'm on camera right now saying I don't have a camera, but I won't be allowed on this work device to download anything like Zencastr or anything like that. So I would have to do things with my other computer that I've never done before to video. So.
Well, we hadn't really discussed how to make that happen either. I've had a couple text messages with Jesse that have not gone anywhere yet, trying to get some time together so he can make a recommendation. But I wondered if we could just take the audio from this sort of thing, even though it's not our favorite method, and do it that way. Because I have my home computer, but I don't have any other, podcast software. And I don't know how anyone could actually separate this, line by line, person by person, in order to edit very much. So yeah, Jesse and I need to get together on that too. Get a better idea. We can do it with phones. Yeah, Cheryl, thank you. But, and in fact, we had a remote radio host is in the podcast budget from the grant that we could get something like that, but it was more to invite visitors. I know that the physical eye to eye in the middle of a podcast recording is just so much different than not being able to see who's around. If we had a guest speaker, we would assume that it's more of a question and answer type session, but if it's meant to be a banter around the table, I don't feel that would go very well over the phone alone. Greg, do you have a different opinion? How about you, Joel?
With Zencastr, you can watch each other's waveform. It's not like it's impossible to see how to do the exchange and the give and take. And I'm wondering if the software that Jesse had in mind isn't even better than that or does some of the same things. On the one hand, it's been very difficult for us to resume this because we weren't really up and running. But had we been more fully in a groove and up and running. Most of the podcasts recorded in the world are recorded on audio only by people who aren't in the same room with each other. So probably just need to find a time where Jesse is available and get you, me, Joel, Jesse, whoever else is interested to make some decisions about how we might restart, whether video or audio, whether phone, or do we need to give some people some microphones?
Yeah, I wonder, we can expand on it further if we can get maybe Greg and Jesse and some of us who are working on this project together in an extended conversation. But I kind of wonder if people who were doing, obviously we're probably not the only ones in this position right now. So I would think that other people who are doing podcasts are probably trying to figure out some way. They're either doing the podcast like Greg is saying and just having people Skyping in or something like that, or transitioning to video because people are consuming more video during the virus right now. So, I'm sure there's some blog posts or something I can read, but, last week, just from a guy whose blog and podcast that I was listening to pre-coronavirus posted, because he was getting asked all the time what equipment he used. He posted the equipment he used to first get started, and that's the webcam that I'm using tonight. And I bought a microphone, that he suggested, which were really inexpensive things that he said were things that you could use, which, an expert could probably tell the difference, but most typical people wouldn't be able to tell, the difference, but it's a quality upgrade from, what's built into your computer or that kind of thing. So, I can definitely spend some time doing some more reading and research on that to see if we can, use some microphones or that kind of thing. His article was actually pretty good, and he went into some more of like what the next step was as far as equipment that he uses now and, that kind of thing. So we can expand on it some more and look into it and see what we can come up with and put together.
I guess I could break down and watch one of these videos that has been recorded in this Hangout format from church or work, just to see for myself what it looks like as a playback experience. I haven't done that because if I was in the meeting, I don't need to watch it again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay. Well, I think it's worth exploring. I mean, we might as well. So if we can figure out a time, I don't know what you can maybe figure out what Jesse's schedule is now, Jen, and send out an email to everybody, and we can figure out a time where we can have a conversation about it to see what could happen.
He called me a second ago.
Oh, there you go.
I sent them the link to our meeting here, hoping that he would just join us. So I'm not sure. Possible I don't know yet, but
for me, the lack of a commute means that I'm more likely to be available as early as 5:30, which before was always 6:30.
Yeah.
So.
All right.
I have something for the future.
Yeah, John.
I got this in the mail, this flyer. It's from the Jehovah's Witness. But if when this church finally gets built and we open up, if we had pamphlets and flyers, and they mailed them to all these houses, out in Barberton, and they mailed their flyer about their church to all these places here in houses in Barberton. If we had flyers made up, I don't know if that qualify for that advertising money, but if we had flyers made up about, Harmony Springs Church grand opening, let's say, in, I don't know, December or whatever, and we mailed them to the housing in that neighborhood in Green and parts of Green, that might be something, I just thought about that might be something we can do, advertising for our church. And we would have a flyer that has, the SHU and what the functions are and maybe a picture of the church. But that might be something to consider for the future. But you don't want to wait till the last minute. So this might be a good, to start now. So when the church is open, we're already ready to land and, have this pamphlet flyer mailed out. It's just a thought for the future.
Yeah, no, for sure. Hey, Jesse, we were just talking about you. Jesse, we were talking a little bit about trying to transition the podcast possibly to like a vidcast, but it sounds like maybe we need to have some sort of conversation with maybe between all of us who were involved in that project a little bit more. But do you have any initial thoughts on how that would, if that's even possible, or how it would go? You're muted right now if you're talking.
Hey, sorry. I just installed this thing, so I didn't realize I was muted.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really good idea, and like most of my podcasting experience has been remote, so I don't think that'll be a problem at all. And so we can just get back together when we can discuss the details of it when there's. I don't think we need everyone there for that, but yeah.
All right.